Well, welcome everyone. This is Wednesday, September the 8th. And tonight I'm broadcasting from the Red Room. Welcome. And it's one of my favorite subjects and probably one of the subjects that's very meaningful to you as well. And that is masculine, feminine, Apollonian, Dionysian, male, female, gender difference, the patriarchy and the matriarchy. I started thinking about this, consciously trying to figure it out, questioning it, wanting to know when I was in my early 20s. So curious about it. I knew that I didn't know enough about it, and I knew that it was important. And I've been learning, curious, living it my whole life. And a big part of what I do in my office every week is work with men and women, the masculine and the feminine. And sometimes I tell couples, I know your wife better than you do, and I know your husband better than you do, because I've been thinking about this so sincerely for so long. And the handout that I put up there for you this evening is a chart. It's pretty dry. It's me wanting to see the matriarchal and the patriarchal, and then what happens when you bring them together and you equally balance and love the qualities of men and the qualities of women. Now, we all know, of course, that we all have a human brain and a human body, and that men have feminine qualities, women have masculine qualities, and yet we are different. And I'll never forget being at a workshop, and we were around the pool before I started to teach. I encountered a psychologist, and she was telling me, she said, it just flabbergasts me. Not sure that that's the word she used, but that was the essence of it. She and her husband had been doing their level best to treat their little girl and their little boy exactly the same. And she was mystified and surprised that the little girl really liked playing with dolls, even though they had dolls for both of the kids, and that the little boy would take up a stick and make a gun out of it because he wanted to play cops and robbers or cowboys and Indians or whatever it was. And here she was seeing the gender difference, and she didn't want to be prejudiced. She wanted to treat her children the same way, and yet she assumed that the boy and the girl, if they treated them the same, would be the same. And I didn't say anything, but I thought, men and women aren't the same. Boys and girls are very different. And what I want to know is, what makes a great guy? What makes a great gal? And how to inspire that and support that and nurture and grow that in our men and our women. So I've been thinking about it and studying it, curious about it, living it, of course, living as a woman in this patriarchal society, and wanting to be able to affirm and respect and empower men and women equally, and not assume that this generic quality is natural to both men and women. I want to know the distinction there. I want to know how to be so respectful of the differences that we have, not only in us as individuals, but in our culture, in the way we run our families, our businesses, and our countries. So anytime you have a question or some feedback or an idea, chime in, please, because this is an intense topic, and most of us have had some pretty meaningful experiences with being male and female. So one of the first things that gave me a view, changed me like nothing else, was a writer, Marion Zimmer Bradley, in the book that she wrote called The Mists of Avalon. I'm going to type this for you. Now, The Mists of Avalon, of course, Avalon. It's about Camelot, Avalon, early England, Britain. It's a lengthy book and very delicious to me. I think that she was, as well as she could be, true to history, and yet a deeper thought. And she wrote the book, The Hugeness of the Arthurian Legend, because it's quite a lengthy book, about all of those times according to the views of the women and their participation. And of course, the central figure of the story is the Lady of the Lake, who is, in essence, the high priestess. And in those days, that was the main spiritual practice or religion, was the world of the high priestess, rather than the world of the priest being prime. The priestess was. So in a certain way, it was a matriarchal religion, even though in those times it wasn't truly a matriarchal society. And there was a monologue in that book that changed me and kind of gave me a new view after I've been looking at how men and women are different, and Apollonian, Dionysian, all those kinds of things. That Merlin came along and he said that the quote-unquote old goddess religions needed to be replaced by the Christian religion, which was headed by a male, because it was time for the culture to evolve and to go quickly. And the essence was that a matriarchy, or a culture that's centered around the feminine and the feminine strengths, was nurturing of relationships, of people, of the home, the community, the kingdom, whatever it was, and wasn't really focused on production, projects, tasks, achievement. And that it was time that civilization got a fast forward. Now understand, this is a story, and this is what she made up, but it gave me a new view, and it got me to thinking, when we have a patriarchy, our men are the providers, protectors, builders, and engineers go into creating, inventing, making things better. And every week of my life, there's something in me that says thank you to the engineers in the world. And right now, I am at the feet of the engineers who created my iMac, my webcam, my microphone, my home, my electricity. Though that comes from a patriarchal culture. And yet, what are the costs of having a patriarchal culture? And I think we're beginning to see that, but not laying it at the feet of losing the partnership way. So I shared with you the Chalice and the Blade and the Partnership Way, the titles of Riane Eisler's books, because she wrote these books a while back showing us the results of what her husband's work had revealed, that there was a time, prehistory, when people lived in what she calls a partnership way, which means men and women were valued equally as a man and as a woman, and yet not needing to adapt. So I believe that many of us women in this time find ourselves needing to adapt to becoming overly masculinized in order to feel like we're worthy or we're respected in certain ways. And I've wondered and asked myself the question in various ways, what would our culture look like if women were valued just as much and the feminine were valued just as much as the masculine? Because the masculine produces, and we can see that production, and yet the feminine creates relationships and culture. So I think when I come down to the most simplistic way of looking at it, our men provide and protect and create, build. Our women create and preserve the culture, which I think of as the tapestry of life that we live in. So if we're going to look at the handout that I gave you tonight, on the left-hand side are the patriarchal values and gifts, and I'm saying that there's a dead end there, and then which is dominating and controlling by the masculine element. And then on the right-hand side is the matriarchal system of values and gifts, and that is a closed circle cutting off things, and also a dominating, controlling by the feminine side. So this is how I've been thinking about it, that we have a current societal imbalance and immaturity, that the current state of society, our culture beliefs conveyed by our heritage, is pretty much in recorded history patriarchy, where men were the head of the family. The masculine elements of people are seen as more important than the feminine elements. That this teaches a higher value for the paternal elements, and the maternal elements are therefore assumed to be less valuable. And I believe I'm one of those philosophers who thinks that growth can result from a synthesis of both into a new partnership-based society. And this is Riane Eisler's book, The Partnership Way, where I was one of those discussion groups back in the 80s talking about late 80s, early 90s, our culture, how we treat each other, what our values and standards are, and if we were to value the masculine and feminine in our individuals and in our men and our women and in the way we function in our businesses and in our homes, in our parenting, how, if, would we make that different? So those discussion groups were endlessly fascinating to me. And The Partnership Way, Riane Eisler's book, posits a series of questions to help us think about that. So I know that objects and goals are very valuable, and let me share with you one of the ways this happens in my private practice. That right now I'm working with 3 women actually, where they come to me and they say, what's the matter with me? I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. And 2 of these women are in their 50s. Another one is in her actually late 20s. And there are others as well. But why don't I have a goal? Why don't I have a point focus and know the goal-oriented steps to get to there so that I amount to something, so I feel like I'm a winner, so I think that I've achieved something, so that I'm valued by my spouse, my boyfriend, my parents, my community, whatever it is. And one of the things that I've learned to teach our men and women is that the masculine side on the left-hand side here has objects, goals, actual things, and projects. They're going linearly to reach a goal, step by step, and get something achieved and done. But if we look at the other side, the feminine side, what's more important than projects are people? The children, the marriages, the friendships, the community, the relationships. And rather than getting a linear goal that step by step we achieve, it's the process of the journey of life, where it's fluid and we're moving from this into that, and then into that. And there may not be a goal at the end. It's the living of something and the growth on the way. So when a woman says to me, what's wrong with me? I don't have a goal. I don't have something that I want to be. And I say to her, that's usually because the best of a woman is to preserve or to create the culture. And I think about that rather than as a point focus with a goal and an achievement at the end that's measurable. It's a weaving of tapestry. It's many, many threads and many, many colors that make up the lifestyle of a home, of the interaction of a relationship, of tending to all the different aspects of maturing our children, of thinking how we serve the community and bond the community together. The goal there is quite complex, and the achievement of one object is not really going to be a measurable thing. And to remind women that if we are here to create and preserve the culture, then that, the goal, how do we measure that goal? What's the quality of that? And if we do have an outcome, when did we see the outcome? Sometimes it's a decade, sometimes it's a lifetime or 3 lifetimes, because it takes a lot to shift a culture, to create a culture. And that means that as a woman, I felt this same sense of inadequacy and got to a certain point of depression because I didn't feel I was achieving enough. Wasn't accomplishing goals. The truth is, I was always busy. I was always learning. And the problem was I would learn about this and enjoy that. And then I wanted to go over here and learn about this. I wanted to know about needlework. I wanted to know about the fine arts. I wanted to know about engineering. I wanted to know about driving a car. I wanted to know about how to drive my dad's tractor in the field. I wanted to know about being a ham radio operator. I also wanted to know about colors and textures and decorating a home. So as a woman, I was very connected with curiosity and passion for all these different things. But if I got to a certain place in my life, I looked at it when I was 30, I looked at it when I was 40, and I thought, gosh, I've been busy and I've been working my best, but does this add up to a hill of beans? I mean, what kind of goal have I reached? What kind of a winner am I? And struggling through that myself, and now having been through that and looked at how that appears for men and women, being able to comfort a woman that says, well, gee whiz, my husband has achieved all this. He has a great goal, and look at what he's done. But here, I've done all these different things, and I don't see that I'm really a winner. Well, if we look at her as a woman who is to know about different elements of creating a home, a family, a cultural environment, a community, a neighborhood, and a way where the people live together in fun, in high quality, in meaning, then she can see that, oh, I know how to do this, and that fits with this, and sooner or later the puzzle pieces start fitting together, where it builds that puzzle or that tapestry. So it's a nice thing to be able to comfort a woman to say, if you've learned all of these things, that's what a woman naturally does, rather than to reach a goal. And yet, it's hard for us to get paid or to get valued for doing that, unless it's a specific job in the world where creating a certain type of the culture is highly esteemed. So chime in, everyone. Give me your questions, your thoughts, your worries, or your challenges. Now, one of the things that I posited in the email today was, which of your beliefs about men and women affect your relationship most? And just recently I was working with a young couple. What's affected their relationship and cost them their intimacy is he thinks she ought to get a job with a good income, and that's what's successful. Now, that's pretty much what we think in our world. You need to be responsible for yourself. You need to have a job that pays you what you're worth, and that the job is doing something that's valuable to our culture. And she's been having a hard time finding a job that suits her, that pays her well, and feeling very inadequate and criticized and judged by him. So one of the things that he's not aware of is that a woman needs to be understood and validated and appreciated for what she does. But in this case, she gets criticized for not hanging in there and having a goal to achieve. So he ends up not appreciating her as a woman because he believes that all people need to be goal-oriented and to earn a great living. And so she's not looking very adequate that way. And she's feeling inadequate. She's feeling like a failure, that she hasn't found a straight career path where she's advancing and that she's got an income that will support her. So their beliefs about men and women have cost them their good friendship because she's feeling inadequate, which means she doesn't trust him anymore because it feels like he's always criticizing her. And he's lost his ability to really love and appreciate her because he thinks she's being a failure. And so then after working with them, I was helping them to see that they're both looking through the lens of what's valuable in a patriarchal culture. Not that we don't want to mentor her to find a great job where she's good at it and she gets a good income, but if we criticize her for not doing that in the way that is vulnerable to a woman, then it breaks her down even more. So that's one of the ways the beliefs about the differences between men and women cost us. Do you have an example of where believing differently men and women costs you? One of the things in an intimate relationship, different beliefs about men and women again, a man, number one, needs to be appreciated and trusted because he's always building and creating and doing things to fix things, to build things, to make things better for us. And he needs to be appreciated for that. But if she doesn't feel safe with him or understood by him, big word, understood, if she's not validated by him, big word, cared for, validated, then she's not going to appreciate him because she feels criticized and judged, and like who she is and what she is isn't valued, isn't worthy. So that's one way those different beliefs come into play, where neither person then is appreciated. Make sense? Got questions about that? Okay, so then what do you think about different yet equally valuable? Different yet equally valuable. I'm wondering how that's appeared in your life, because it's appeared in all of our lives. We're working on this. We're trying to figure out how to have a peer marriage, how to have equality, how to not be prejudiced. And yet we're looking at the world through this patriarchal colored lens. So I want to share with you one of the ones that popped up for me recently. And I had a real struggle with this one. I was having a hard time. Jack and I were watching Charlie Rose, and I admire him so much. It's one of the few high quality things that's on television these days, and one of the few things that we actually watch. So we record it, and then when we put our feet up, we watch Charlie Rose. Well, he's been doing a series on the brain, and then, of course, a series on emotional intelligence, which is one of the things I know quite a bit about, and one of the things that I teach. So I think, oh, cool. Charlie Rose is going to interview people about emotional intelligence. I want to do that. Well, I struggled. The panel of guests that he invited to discuss emotional intelligence, they were scientists, which means very much on the patriarchal side, on the masculine side. Scientists that are measurable. If you look at the handout that I gave you tonight, it's reason and logic, intellect. It's quantifiable and measurable. That's the masculine way of looking at something, and that's how they were looking at emotional intelligence. They were looking at the scientific structure of the brain. They were looking at the chemicals that are released in the brain, and it was 3 men and a woman, and the woman was very much a scientist. You know, from the great, Harvard, Stanford, Yale schools. And I thought, they're talking about emotional and the emotional intelligence part of the brain as if it were something that's intellectual. They're looking at it through the lens of intellect. And I'm saying, how can we really understand emotional intelligence if we only look through the intellect? Don't we need to look through the heart? Don't we need to look through how feelings appear in us and in life? So then if we look over at the feminine part, instead of reason, logic, and intellect, we look at emotion and intuition and the heart, things of the heart, and things that are more subjective, things that are global and adaptable, things that have to do with clemency and empathy. So the more feminine side of understanding humanity, because emotional intelligence is from the heart, not from the mind. Although we only have a feeling, as I've said before, in response to what we think about or what we perceive. So I had a struggle with that, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about that. I wanted to study emotional intelligence not just from the scientific organism and chemicals. I wanted stories about how human greatness appears in the process of being, in emotional response to things, and how an emotionally intelligent behavior looks, rather than how the chemical appears in the brain. And then, of course, I have a question. Is that chemical, if we have an emotional behavior, is that chemical a response to our perception? Or is that chemical a response to our biology or our chemistry? Or is that biology or chemical a response to something that we've experienced on multiple levels? So does that make sense? Am I getting a little too out there? Somebody just type me a thought or a question. Are you tracking with me, dears? So when I looked at this model, I did my very best to imagine what would the ideal world look like if we had men and women working together, being men and women, not trying to both be scientists. Or, to be fair, in a matriarchal society, and there aren't many of them we know, like in the South Sea Islands, where everybody gets along together and they have great relationships and community, but they don't get much done because they're all busy being connected and in the process and in the journey of life. I love the masculine part of us. I love the feminine part of us. And I want to know, what would our world look like if those were equally developed, equally valued, and lived in partnership or in concert with each other? And so I'm thinking that we would have more efficient achievement because we would be more considerate, like what's happening in some of our businesses today, where we're really sincerely learning to value our people as much as our products. Where we have, I think about it as unencumbered advancement, where rather than just focusing on projects, we're focusing on how much we enjoy the project and the relationship of the people we're working with on the team to advance whatever it is that we want to achieve. This makes me think about one of my favorite other TV shows right now, and it's Undercover Boss. Have you watched any of those? Where the CEO of an organization goes out, in a large organization, a large company, goes out into the field, goes undercover and pretends that he's an entry-level employee wanting to train for a job in this facility. And don't you know, he learns so many things, and this is a sign of our times that it's thrilling to me. He learns so many things about, yes, improving the process, and how appreciating the people and the relationships is going to improve the process so the product is more excellent or more plentiful. I'm wondering if you've watched any of those. I highly recommend them. Oh, I got good. I got somebody commenting. Are you saying that women should repudiate their intellect and their logic? No, definitely not. Because me talking here, I'm a very intellectual, very logical woman, and I love that about me, being me. Are you saying that men should deny themselves access to their hearts and emotions? Absolutely not. No. What I'm trying to say, dears, is there's a difference, and how much better the world would be if we had both, and both were equally valued. And what I'm saying is that largely we've been paying, and very often money or income tells us what's most important in the world, because we get paid money for that. We get paid money for producing products and projects, rather than, think about the more feminine jobs which take care of people, like school teachers, rather than a research scientist, or a person in child care, rather than a person who sells products, and how very disparate their incomes are. So, you and I know that we've had conversations about this endlessly in our country, that our teachers deserve to be paid more. Our school teachers, our daycare workers, although I wish we didn't have daycare. I wish our kids were being tended to by their own parents. And about our professors, that they're not really paid in a commensurate way as engineers or scientists or people who are producing products. Are you on track? Does that make sense? Where were you as we moved beyond those cultural stereotypes? We have moved beyond them, but we're not living to them. That's my point. I'm sure that you're the expert, but I don't know that I'm the expert. I've just been thinking about it a lot. Yes, there is a difference. You said, wouldn't it be great if we celebrated the difference? I say, wouldn't it be wonderful if we didn't assign gender to personal characteristics? Well, because gender would be, are you saying that gender would be, how do I say this? Valuing somebody differently? This is the quandary, and you're right on track with me, because this is the struggle that I've had, and it's like, this is the first time I've ever talked about this in public, because I've been wanting to be so respectful. I want to know truly what's a great man. I want to know truly what's a great woman. I don't want a man to try and be a woman. I don't want a woman to try and be a man. And so I've been asking myself, how do I live? How do I develop myself as the best woman that I can be? Yes, of course, all of us are intelligent and logical, and all of us have a heart and love to be in relationships, and we are different. And I don't think it's prejudicial to say, I'm a woman and I want to be a woman, and I love that gender. That's why I put in the beginning quotes, Vive la Difference. I love being a woman, and I'm not meaning to be prejudiced by saying that as a woman I'm different from a man, and that a man is different from me because he's a guy. I want a man to be all man, the way he wants to be, the way he naturally is at his best. And I want, as a woman, to be the way I am at my best. You know, I love sewing. Most men, it's like, nah, I'd rather go fishing. Or I'd rather invent something. Does that make sense? Am I speaking to that? That I am assigning gender to personal characteristics because I love that. I want to be a real woman, and I don't want to be like a man. And I want to know how that's different. Not that it's a prejudicial statement or a devaluing statement. Does that make sense? I love these questions that you've given me. Tell me, are you on track? Am I answering this? So, or tell me a little bit more about the distinction you're thinking about. Because this is exactly the kind of dialogue I hoped I would find tonight. What scholar or psychologist or social worker decided that, quote, to relate is feminine, unquote, and to be logical is masculine? Ooh. Now you're gonna you need references. You need the specific sources of the research, and I don't think it came from a social worker or a psychologist or a scholar. I like to refer back to the great myths, the great stories that tell us about life. And if you think about like the Greek myths, all the Joseph Campbell work, if you think about the traditions of stories in the great books and philosophical and religious works, and how it's described the way men and women live and work and take care of each other. I don't think it came from our times or some scientists just from the last 100 or 200 years. To me, it's there evident in the great stories, the great rituals, the great pieces of literature. One of my favorite, of course, is Shakespeare. And it's very, to me, it's very evident there how he writes a woman and how he writes a man, not with any prejudice, but with delight in the interaction among them. And, you know, it's the women who have the babies. It's the women who create a home where you live and you're nurtured and the family relates. And it's the guys that go out and find the food, build the bridges. Okay. Then are you saying that the great myths have more value and accuracy than modern scientific research? I ask myself these questions all the time. Do you? Yes, I do. Modern scientific research is just modern scientific research. And yes, we wanted it. We needed it desperately. We want to know how to heal diseases. We want to know how to create steel and air conditioning and electricity. We needed those. And that's, to me, the masculine part of the inventor, the builder, the action energy that has those goals and reaches those goals. And the myths are not about producing products, are they? They're about life lessons. So actually, I'm on your side here. But you ask the greatest questions because you're asking the same kind of questions I've been asking myself for decades. I want to know in the most intelligent and kind way how to empower people, and that means how do I be true to respecting a man to be the best part of who he is and not assume that he's something he's not. How do I know what is the best way of being a woman and to draw her forth and to encourage her and those things without forcing her into a shoe that doesn't fit her? So, you know, off the top of my head, I'm not a research scientist. I am a researcher. I read a lot. I experiment a lot in my private practice. I'm listening to stories. I'm caring about people. I'm listening to what's working and what doesn't work. And the hundreds of people that I've worked with, they tend to mirror and prove to me, to show to me what is it that works for them and what doesn't work for them. And so some of the great writers and thinkers, there are some of those books that I just love because it supports me in the work that makes people love each other and feel happy together and to feel good about themselves and how they pattern their lives. Does that make sense? So continue this dialogue. This is too cool. I love you being a little bit of the devil's advocate and a little bit of the same thinker that I am in your own way. I'd love to know more about how you have learned to articulate that for yourself. For me, the great myths are, they're the great universal patterns that we have that are timeless about life and how we learn and how we grow. But to put it bluntly, I always have trouble explaining such stereotypical concepts to my own mind without it objecting fiercely. Ah, so you gave me a clue, dear. You used the word stereotypical. Oh, none of us likes a stereotype. We don't want to be pigeonholed. We don't want to be shoved in a box. Without my mind objecting fiercely, yes. Exactly. And that's where most of us asking these questions come from. If we're wanting to really understand men and women, we don't want to be prejudiced. We don't want to disrespect, which means intellectually, mentally, which is our human brain, we want it to be truth. If it's truth, then it's something that's accurate. It's something that's that we can depend on, that we can use as a benchmark, that we can move from, that we can build on top of. So yes, our minds, our intelligences want truths. We don't want to be duped. We don't want to be manipulated. Now, stereotype, ooh, isn't that such a loaded word? Stereotype says, oh, I'm fitting you into this mold and I'm categorizing you and I'm not going to let you be all that you can be. A side comment, my husband thinks I spend way too much time thinking about this topic. Really? Have you written anything about it? He's bored with the whole subject of gender. Well, yeah, he's a guy. It's like, if I were a guy, if I was thinking about a healthy man, he'd say, well, okay, I got it. Now what are we going to do? A guy wants something to happen. He wants to create something. He wants to build something. He wants to do something. He wants to solve a problem. And this is the young couple I just saw today. He's a great guy. And unknowingly, he's been breaking down his lady to the point where she's clinically depressed. Doing it the way a guy would ordinarily do it, because he really doesn't understand communication, and neither does she. And so it's like, well, this is no sweat. I know how to help people understand male-female communication. But as a guy, when she's in a troubled situation, immediately our men want to provide and protect for us. They want to, quote unquote, fix it. They want to do something, get it done, solve the problem. Thank goodness they want to do that. Not that we don't want to do that as women. But what we really do want as women also is we want to be cared for and understood. We want him to be interested in what we think and who we are. We don't want him to change us. We don't want him to fix us. We don't want him to misjudge that, yeah, of course I want something to be solved or something to happen. And don't you think I'm intelligent? I can fix it myself. I need your understanding. I need your friendship. I need your validation. I want an interaction and a relationship. I want your friendship. I don't want you to fix it. And if you tell me how to fix it, you've just discounted who I am. And right there, it cuts off some of my sense of self, my sense of worthiness, if you just want to fix me, if you just want to fix it. So a guy would get bored with talking about gender because he's saying, okay, what are we going to do? Where does this lead? Well, how do we solve the problem, or where are we going to go with this? I don't want to just sit here and talk about it over and over and over again. Let's accomplish something. Okay, she says, I continue to be not so much fascinated, but rather bothered by it. It says you're in touch with reality in these times, right? Because that was me watching Charlie Rose, you know. I was bothered by it. I wanted him to study and to have people on a panel. Well, maybe this week it's scientists, but then next week it's people who are teachers, people who are storytellers, people who know the depths of culture, you know, Shakespeare experts, if you will, or people who are experts with nurturing teenagers into empowerment, and how that happens because they're so full of hormones and emotions. I wanted that too. And frankly, it's very sad to me. I thought we were farther along than that. And so, yeah, I'm bothered by it too. So having this discussion is one of the ways that I use that energy, because I need to teach about it. And of course the talks, I've got a talk in me that has to do with partly about gender difference and looking at a partnership way. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because we're looking at the world through the masculine or the patriarchal colored glasses, and we can't help it. We were born into this society. Hi, Heather. Finally, I get to tune in and wish I'd done so sooner. Oh, thank you, dear. Thank you for tuning in. And thank you for saying I'm fascinating. You give me enthusiasm. You're mirroring for me something that's always been difficult for me. I'm always bothered by it. And if I were to say one of the things that's very indicative that both men and women are interested in, it's our sexuality. Masculine and feminine sexuality, we all know this is very different. And it bespeaks of our patriarchal culture. One of the things I had when I was a young teenager was I was a voracious reader, and I found an old wooden box of books in the attic. Well, kind of in a storage. It wasn't quite the attic, but in a storage part in our house when I was growing up. And so I'm, okay, more books, because I'd already read every book in the house. And I found this book. It kind of looked like a hymnal. It was hardbound, and it was black. Well, turns out it was a quote-unquote marriage manual, which means it had scientific drawings and pictures of men and women and genitalia and how men were different from women and how conception happened, all those kinds of things, which of course in those days you never talked about. And so nobody ever talked to me about sexuality or my body or the differences in gender, what orgasm was. And I learned about that from my other little kind of teenage friends and from reading. My parents and the adults, the mentors in my life, never once broached the topic. It was never a topic of conversation. They didn't know how, and they were so limited themselves. And, my mom has passed away now, but so I can say this, both my parents. She called me on the phone and when she was 50, and she just wanted to know if I knew what an orgasm was. And I said, yeah, Mom, I do. And she said, well, I just had my first one, and I just wanted to make sure that you knew about it. Isn't that adorable? Because in that marriage manual that I found, it said that women didn't have orgasms. So what does that say to a young girl that's been having orgasms for years? What's the matter with me? So right there is an experience as a girl, as a female, as a woman, where there's something wrong with me, where I wasn't understood, I wasn't validated, I was told that there was something wrong. So right there was the beginning of my journey with my body, with my sexual response, my gender, my sexuality, that traveled with me through my entire life. And, I was relentless trying to learn to grow, how to be healthy with myself, my body, my sexuality, and the men in my life. But that was one of the places where I was hurt, where I was discounted, where I wasn't understood for my gender. And our sex life, our sexuality is such a part of the renewal and the intimacy and the bond and the wonder of being male and female together. So there's one of the things where there's a specific story and there's a specific goal to answer your question about, yes, I'm bothered by it, and I know we're getting better about it, and yet I still find people who have misunderstandings about themselves. Tell me what you think about that one. Because, anytime we talk about sexuality, most of us are tender and sensitive about that one if we're healthy. And if we're also wounded or in some way deprived, really. So if I'm to come down to how I'm bothered and how you're bothered, dear. Your husband thinks you spend way too much time thinking about this topic. That may be because he's a guy and he's comfortable in this society. But this is one of the things that I've observed also. If I can't be a healthy, happy woman, and of course, entering the topic of sexuality is pretty much important for all of us as women and definitely as men. If I can't be a healthy, happy woman, I'm then affecting the life of my beloved. How can he be healthy and happy if I'm somehow wounded or feeling inadequate? Can he change that? Can he heal that in me when I'm getting all these messages from our culture? So yes, it's like, how's he going to change that? And sometimes he doesn't see it the way a woman sees it, because we've been immersed in it and discounted by it in so many different ways in different cultures. And that we haven't even started to think about what it's like to be a woman in certain third world countries where she can't wear the same attire. She's abused or damaged if she shows her body, which means her body in some way is not okay for just to be natural in the world. So let's not go down that road, because we could spend hours there, couldn't we? And we've only got a few minutes left tonight. But do you see why you're bothered and why I'm bothered? Okay, let's see here. I've found that men often seem to do their best when paired with women who need a caretaker. Yeah. Yet the same man, when paired with an independent female, seems to lose his drive and life energy. Ooh, thank you for saying that. Yes, because our men need the nourishment, need the softness and openness of a woman for their renewal. Just in the purely sexual sense, I think about a man comes to us and in orgasm, he dies for a moment. Like the French word for orgasm is le petit mort, or the little death. He dies when we open to him and we give him life again. He's reborn between our legs. He's nourished and revitalized. And if he's not nourished like that, he's deprived of the male-female bond, where he then has the energy to go out again and to create, to produce, to solve problems, and to come back and say, did I do good, honey? And we say, oh my gosh, sweetie, you did fabulously. And then he says, so let me go do more for you. I know that I don't have much time, so I'm just going quickly off the top of my head to that comment, because that's a beautiful thing to say, and I could talk about it for another hour. How are we as women to manage this? We need to find our independence, and we also need to adore a man the way a woman adores a man, and not to be competitive with him, right? Yes, sexuality necessitates difference, but consider, other than increased muscle mass in men and the ability to bear children, does anything else in life necessitate a difference between men and women? Ooh, good comment. Ha! Well, I have many things to say about that. See? I have many things to say about that, and I know that, we've got 5 minutes left until 9 o'clock. The answer is no. I differ with you, my dear. Yes, there are many things else's in life that necessitate difference between men and women. I am absolutely devoted to that belief, very intelligently and with great love and respect. Now, one of the things we know about brain difference between men and women is we as women have a corpus callosum that's larger, which means we connect left and right brain, which means we think and feel differently from men. That means, therefore, if we think differently, we all have minds and brains. If a woman thinks differently from how a man thinks, she has different things, different strengths to offer the world. He has different strengths to offer the world. So, if I'm to quickly describe that distinction, when the left and the right hemispheres are more connected in a woman, that means she thinks and feels at the same time. And one of the fun things I say about this is, I need to be able to think and feel, because if I, like a man, can go into my feeling brain and not think, I could get lost in my emotions and my subjectivity, my creativity, and the children might be in danger, and I'm not noticing them. You know that a woman has to have eyes in the back of her head to notice what the kids are doing. So a woman thinks and feels at the same time all the time. Ah, ha! You're so welcome. And so a man can either have the luxury, in certain ways, of going into his right brain or going into his left brain, which means when he's processing his feelings, he can't think about them. And it's hard for him. A woman, on the other hand, when I'm feeling something, I know exactly why, because I can think at the same time. I have to confess it's my obsession, too. Well, then, you and I are linked in the same cause, and I think it's critical, because right now, I think one of the things that's most difficult in the world, and if I get to the greatest point of this, two things. I believe that if men and women were loved equally and allowed to be naturally in our strengths, we would have a garden on this planet, and we would have much peace. We wouldn't have conflict. If you think about where the conflict comes from, it's often from religion, and it's often from a patriarchal religion, which values men differently and more than how women, or how men work rather than women. And so I think that it's a global imperative in certain ways that we are deprived of the love of women, loving women as women are, and the love of what women do, and making it count more, so that our men are more loved because our women are happier and more loving. Our women are more loved, and therefore the children are more loved. The children are more educated and stimulated, and they grow up to be more empowered. That our world, the costs of our world now are looking at, just think about how our engineers, our fabulous engineers, have created our computers. And yet it didn't come with a manual written by a woman that said, now be careful. If we allow our children to have too much of this, they're going to be deprived of other things that they need in their life, like interaction with their peers, like going on camping trips, like learning to skate or write poetry, be interactive. So if we had a manual that was written along with our inventions, they would be used more artfully, more um, more respectfully for people and their people's lives. And I'm I'm sad that people sometimes feel they have to go into Second Life in order to do the things they want to do in life rather than their real life. I think that this is affecting our globe in a subtle and huge way, that we need to now see and treasure the wonders that a woman brings to life, so that men are more loved, more appreciated, so that what we invent, create in our homes, in our communities, and in our countries is more about the partnership way, about the men and the women who adore each other for exactly who they are and how different they are. And so no wonder your husband gets bothered and bored with this, because there's no simple solution, is there? It's so deliciously complex. It deserves our attention. And yet, how do we move forward? How do we make something actually happen? So next week, I'm going to talk more about specific things that we can do in this vein. I don't know if you've encountered the Stone Center's description of raising a girl. And truth to tell, if we really think about raising a girl, what happens now is, I love Dr. Michael Gurian and his work, understanding what it takes to raise a fine young man. And a fine young man is one of those young men who understands how to adore a woman and appreciate a woman and a girl, etc. Any questions, dears? Any comments before we close this evening and think about next week? I am thrilled with what you've asked me tonight. It was so delightful, so delicious, and so many open doors that deserve so much more time, attention, and specifics. So we will do that. I'm excited about bringing new things to us next week, and if you'll tune in next week and bring me what you find, I would love to hear about that. So everyone, thank you for tuning in. Thank you for your fabulous participation. You make the Red Room fun and exciting, not only for me, but for the other listeners and viewers. So thank you, dears. This is for you, and it's for a better life. Good night, everyone.